Next week, I'll be in Europe to coordinate with our closest allies and partners. In Estonia, I will reaffirm our unwavering commitment to the defense of our NATO allies. At the NATO summit in the United Kingdom. We'll focus on the additional steps we can take to ensure the alliance remains prepared for any challenge. Our meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Commission will be another. Opportunity for our alliance to continue our partnership with Ukraine. And I look forward to reaffirming the unwavering commitment of the United States to Ukraine and its people when I welcome President Poroshenko to the White House next month. So with that, I'm going to take a few questions. And I'm going to start with somebody who I guess is now a big cheese. He's moved on. But I understand this is going to be his last chance to ask me a question in the press room. So I want to congratulate Chuck Todd and give him first dibs. Q, I'm glad you said in the press room. Let me start with Syria. The decision that you have to make between first of all. Is it a if or when situation about going after ISIL in Syria? Can you defeat ISIL or ISIS without going after them in Syria? And then, how do you prioritize? You have said that Assad has lost legitimacy to lead. Defeating ISIS could help Assad keep power. Talk about how you prioritize those two pieces of your foreign policy. President Obama, well, first of all, I want to make sure everybody is clear on what we're doing now, because it is limited. Our focus right now is to protect American personnel on the ground in Iraq, to protect our embassy. To protect our consulates, to make sure that critical infrastructure that could adversely affect our personnel is protected. Where we see an opportunity that allows us with very modest risk to help the humanitarian situation there, as we did in Sinjar Mountain. We will take those opportunities after having consulted with Congress. But our core priority right now is just to make sure that our folks are safe and to do an effective assessment of Iraqi and Kurdish capabilities. As I said, I think in the last press conference, in order for us to be successful, we've got to have an Iraqi government that is unified and inclusive. So we are continuing to push them to get that job done. As soon as we have an Iraqi government in place, the likelihood of the Iraqi security forces being more effective in taking the fight to ISIL significantly increases. And the options that I'm asking for from the Joint Chiefs focuses. Primarily on making sure that ISIL is not overrunning Iraq. What is true, though, is that the violence that's been taking place in Syria has obviously given ISIL a safe haven there in ungoverned spaces. And in order for us to degrade ISIL over the long term, we're going to have to build a regional strategy. Now, we're not going to do that alone. We're going to have to do that with other partners, and particularly Sunni partners. Because part of the goal here is to make sure that Sunnis both in Syria and in Iraq feel as if they've gotten Investment in a government that actually functions, a government that can protect them. A government that makes sure that their families are safe from the barbaric acts that we've seen in ISIL. And right now, those structures are not in place. And that's why the issue with respect to Syria is not simply a military issue, it's also a political issue. It's also an issue that involves all the Sunni states in the region and Sunni leadership recognizing that this cancer that has developed is one that they have to be just as invested in defeating as we are. And so to cut to the chase in terms of what may be your specific concerns, Chuck. My priority at this point is to make sure that the gains that ISIL made in Iraq are rolled back. And that Iraq has the opportunity to govern itself effectively and secure itself. But when we look at a broader strategy that is consistent with what I said at West Point, that's consistent with what I said at the National Defense College. Clearly ISIL has come to represent the very worst elements in the region that we have to deal with collectively. And that's going to be a long-term project. It's going to require us to stabilize Syria in some fashion. And stabilizing Syria in some fashion means that we've got to get moderate Sunnis who are able to govern and offer a real alternative and competition to what ISIL has been doing in some of these spaces. Now, the last point with respect to Assad, it's not just my opinion, I think it. Would be international opinion that Assad has lost legitimacy in terms of dropping barrel bombs on innocent families and killing tens of thousands of people. And right now, what we're seeing is the areas that ISIL is occupying are not controlled by Assad anyway. And, frankly, Assad doesn't seem to have the capability or reach to get into those areas. So I don't think this is a situation where we have to choose between Assad or the kinds of people who carry on the incredible violence that we've been seeing there. We will continue to support a moderate opposition inside of Syria. In part because we have to give people inside of Syria a choice other than ISIL or Assad. And I don't see any scenario in which Assad somehow is able to bring peace and stability to a region that is majority Sunni and has not so far shown any willingness to share power with them. Or in any kind of significant way deal with the long-standing grievances that they have there. Q. Do you need Congress's approval to go into Syria? President Obama, I have consulted with Congress throughout this process. I am confident that as Commander-in-Chief I have the authorities. To engage in the acts that we are conducting currently. As our strategy develops, we will continue to consult with Congress. And I do think that it will be important for Congress to weigh in. Or that our consultations with Congress continue to develop so that the American people are part of the debate. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We don't have a strategy yet. I think what I've seen in some of the news reports suggests. That folks are getting a little further ahead of where we're at than we currently are. And I think that's not just my assessment, but the assessment of our military as well. We need to make sure that we've got clear plans, that we're developing them. At that point, I will consult with Congress and make sure that their voices are heard. But there's no point in me asking for action on the part of Congress before. I know exactly what it is that is going to be required for us to get the job done. Colleen McCain Nelson. Q. Thank you, Mr. President. Do you consider today's escalation in Ukraine an invasion? And when you talk about additional costs to Russia, are you ready at this point to impose broader economic sanctions? Or are you considering other responses that go beyond sanctions? President Obama, I consider the actions that we've seen in the last week a continuation of what's been taking place for months now. As I said in my opening statement, there is no doubt that this is not a homegrown indigenous uprising in eastern Ukraine. The separatists are backed, trained, armed, financed by Russia. Throughout this process, we've seen deep Russian involvement in everything that they've done. I think in part because of the progress that you had seen by the Ukrainians around Donetsk and Luhansk. Russia determined that it had to be a little more overt in what it had already been doing. But it's not really a shift. What we have seen, though, is that President Putin and Russia have repeatedly passed by potential off-ramps to resolve this diplomatically. And so in our consultations with our European allies and partners, my expectation is that we will take additional steps primarily because we have not seen any meaningful action on the part of Russia to actually try to resolve this in diplomatic fashion. And I think that the sanctions that we've already applied have been effective. Our intelligence shows that the Russians know they've been effective. Even though it may not appear on Russian television. And I think there are ways for us to deepen or expand the scope of some of that work. But ultimately, I think what's important to recognize is the degree to which Russian decision-making is isolating Russia. They're doing this to themselves. And what I've been encouraged by is the degree. To which our European partners recognize, even though they are bearing a cost in implementing these sanctions. They understand that a broader principle is at stake. And so I look forward to the consultations that we'll have when I see them next week. Zeke Miller. Q. Thank you, Mr. President. Last year, you said that you believe our democracy is stronger when the president acts with the support of Congress. In response to Chuck's question, you said you don't have a strategy yet. But you'll reconsider that going forward. But why didn't you go to Congress before this current round of strikes in Iraq? Do you not believe that that's the case anymore, what you said last year? And throughout your career you've also said that.